That's great. All right, let's see if that works. Hold on, we're just running a little behind here. All right. All right. Where's my... All right, just hang on. I just need to get situated here, and hopefully this is gonna work out all right. I'm trying to get loaded on. All right, there we go. So give me a minute, and just hang on 1 second. Let's see. With you shortly. All right. So yeah. So give me a minute. The day's been running long, and so stand by 1 minute, okay? I appreciate you. Thanks so much. Just gotta get my wife situated. Hold on. Let's see here. All right. You need a plate here.
I need a deep plate, and I need a fork, a big spoon, and another big spoon. One big spoon to scoop up the stuff. Why didn't you bring this one? Thank you. How many people are there? Huh?
Okay. Let's see here. Let me get situated here. All right. Let's see. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate you. Just make sure I can see. I'm on YouTube as well, and so this will be kind of fun. Okay, cool. So let me just make sure that you can hear me on the GoToMeeting. Everybody can give me a thumbs up or a yes would be helpful. And everybody can hear me on YouTube, right? Got a few people on. Okay. Make sure that I'm good here. Can you give me a thumbs up or something, some sort of icon on YouTube so I know you hear me? Everybody can hear me or no? Let me just make sure. Hold on. Let's see. Do I have everything on there? Okay. There we go. Good. All right, great. I'm glad that you can hear me okay. Okay, cool. And on YouTube. All right, perfect. Thank you so much for your patience. This day has been running behind nicely. it's kind of wild. Just give you some heads up or what's been going on the last this last week or last week I was down in Florida. We're working on a naturalization process for some clients down there. Excited about doing some of that process within Florida instead of the District of Columbia. So we're looking forward to working with the court with that process. And so we're not charting new territory, we're charting actually old territory, the way things used to be before the federal government started doing their stuff. So so anyway, that's some of that. That was been on my plate. Last week was away. So we were in Florida for the winter and then came back. I already told you about what was going on with my office. I dropped into my office today and they're doing the construction on that. So they have all of the construction people out of there, and that's where they had their temporary office. And so now they had renovated it, put electricity in and all kinds of stuff for me. I'm still waiting for them to do some walls and the floors. And I suppose at some point they told me I'd be in there before June 1st, or at least by June 1st. I think I probably should be able to get in there by next week sometime, hopefully, if they do what they're supposed to do. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be awesome because we're looking to get a lot of work done and do a lot of outreach and stuff like that. So that I'm thankful for. Um, and what else? Yeah, so we're preparing for going to the Pork Fest, which will be in June. It's like the third week in June, and I'm hoping to speak there. So I'm looking to connect with them on that, and that'll be exciting. And then normally what happens at the Pork Fest is that I set up what they call a hub, and then so I'll do talks every day, like Tuesday through Sunday, and or Tuesday through Saturday probably, and then I'll do daily talks at the Pork Fest, and we get to engage with a lot of people over that week, and I'm looking forward to that. That'll be a good time. And yeah, so we've been staying busy with new passport clients, and we've had another number of clients that are taking the workshop and also getting into the other workshop works. That's exciting, and I'm glad to be helping with some of that. So, that all being said, I just want to welcome you to this call tonight. Some of the things that are coming up is on Thursday, I'm going to do a call. Normally, that's like a Bible study night, but I'm titling this certainly a fellowship. But on Thursday night is when I'm going to deal with helping churches to come out of the federal zone. We're looking to travel to churches to help them, their congregation, stop filing, eliminate their income tax liability, all those kind of things, and set up a church so that they're outside of that federal jurisdiction and can come back to more of an organic way of being. And so that's our intention. And so if you want to be a part of that type of activity and help us promote that kind of stuff, come on Thursday night, which is I think at 7 o'clock, and we'll talk about that. I also already have a client that is part of that same vision and plan. We're going to discuss some of those details and logistics and what that'll look like. I we Not sure. I don't believe that I'll be posting that on YouTube. That'll be only a go-to meeting, and we'll probably record it and do some of that. So that's Thursday. Then on Sunday, one of the things that I've told you that I've been working on is a freedom prayer website that will pray for freedom in America. My goal for that is that there would be prayer for America 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I'm looking to build that because it's something that the Almighty has put on my heart. And so I'm trying to get that done. So we are in the process of that. The website's being developed. We've already looked at the preliminary stuff. We will do a soft launch and hopefully bring some people on that are going to be committed to praying for freedom, starting here in America. And so if you have an interest in that, I sent out some information. It'll be 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. I'm going to start that off with a sharing on prayer, what it is, and then move into what we're expecting, because this is going to be more of an interactive type of thing with respect to prayer. And so what we're after is what God would have for us. We're certainly going to pray for the things that we want to do, but we also want to hear what He has for us, and we're looking to take action on that. And so that will actually come back to us from those of us that are, those that our prayer partners are participating in. I'm going to show them what I'm looking for in that, and we're going to help facilitate that. So I'm really excited about that interactive nature of prayer. Most of the time when we pray or when there is prayer, it's going up, but most of the time we're not aware of what's coming back, and that's what I'm after. So that we'll talk about that on Sunday. I'm going to be sharing from Scripture, prayer in general, and want to empower you that way. If you have an interest in wanting to do a biblical based prayer type thing, we have that available. I do have a class online that culminates in perfect prayer. It's a foundational biblical class. There's no cost to it. It's online on the website. I'd have to look and see where that is. Let me see. I don't think I have it up on the tab up. But anyway, but you can go and find that. It may be under our classes and stuff, but it may be under a different section. I don't recall off the top of my head. So, but anyway, that's what's going on. What's on my plate among everything else, and so I'm here tonight I want to answer your questions and get into some of that. So you can either text questions, which I'm getting a question right here on the GoToMeeting. Now, just want to mention this about the GoToMeeting is if you want to talk with me or ask questions verbally, you can go to GoToMeeting and or go to that email or our website, and it'll have a link to log into that if you want to ask questions that way. If you want to ask a question on YouTube, that's fine. I'll make sure that I don't miss anybody's stuff, and I'll get those questions answered as well. Let me see if I can pull this up. There we go. And so anyway, so let's get into it, and we'll go from there. And I'll answer questions on the passport process or IRS or anything like that. Someone says, I was on the call 2 weeks ago and sent you a couple emails with some last remaining questions I have before committing to the service, but I haven't heard back. Should be asking here instead of, are you back logged in the moment? Okay, that's great, Aaron. I appreciate that. Yeah, we do have a backlog of questions. We try to move questions and things onto this kind of a platform. If it is of a private nature, and you want to talk to me personally, if you're looking for logistics of what you should do and such as that, you can purchase an hour's worth of consultation time. We're glad to facilitate that. That would require you to sign a hold harmless agreement and all that. That way we have a client relationship. Or if you just got a quick something before you get into taking the classes and all, and you want to talk to me on the phone, I'm glad to take a quick call. You would go to statecitizen@destinationfreedom.org and then just specifically mention or you want to ask me a question, and then I'll give you a call, or you can include your contact information, and I certainly will be glad to reach out to you as soon as we can. We do have a backlog of people, so sometimes it's challenging to get that. So Aaron, you're on here. So do you are you good to ask your question on the GoToMeeting, or you want to just open your mic and ask me, or unless it's more of a private nature, you want to talk on the phone? Okay. Sure. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, just want to mention those of you on YouTube that can't hear Aaron talking. Again, this is on the GoToMeeting. I will repeat his questions before I answer his questions so that you know what they are. So just hang in there, be patient. So go ahead, Aaron, with your question. I I don't think you do, but go ahead, ask your question so I can help you understand that. Sure. Yeah, I'll address that. Aaron was just asking a question about the um, 10, what he called 1099 income, and those forms associated with that, and I'll answer that in a second. Go ahead, Aaron. Sure. I want to answer both those questions. I want to just clarify with respect to income in general. But um, yes, the IRS deals with husbands and wives as they're being the same entity. So if you're filing jointly or you've filed jointly in the past, and either one has a tax liability, they'll go after whatever's available, the path of least resistance, either way or both. It's the same thing. When you read the tax code and you read definition even for the term husband and wife, those are interchangeable. It doesn't matter. It's like one entity. That's how the IRS deals with it. And of course, if you're going to file separately, if she's going to stay in the system, you're not going to have joint bank accounts. You're not going to have joint filing. None of that. She would file on her own and separately and do those kind of things. Does she need to quit her job? Not necessarily. Okay. And if she's working for the town, what I did when I was a selectman of my town and they wanted me, and they were only going to compensate me 2 grand, but they do still set you up like you're an employee and they'll do withholding and all that. I wasn't going to participate in any of that. So I just told them, in my situation, I wasn't interested in receiving any cash for being elected by the town people. But I also told them that if I incurred any cost associated with what I'm doing for the town, then I would invoice them accordingly, and then the selectmen would approve that and all that. So the idea is the town does have contractors and they do hire people, and that's the way that she would do what she does. And of course, she'd have to understand what she's doing and fill them out accordingly. A lot of people refer to themselves, even when they're in the system, that they call it 1099 income or all that. That is not the form. That's not what you even call that. Okay, because the 1099 is an informational return from the payer. And so the form that you have or that one has is a W-9. Now, whenever someone asks for a tax ID number social as a contractor, just the asking of it is a W-9, which is a request for a tax ID number. They can do that online. They can do that with their own piece of paper. But if they're asking for a social or tax ID number in with regard to taxes, just the asking of it is a W-9. And of course, they want you to sign certain paperwork accordingly. We have W-9s that are specifically for state citizens that are outside that have an exemption. And that exemption is based upon their foreign status. That's a certificate of foreign status. So with us, you have a W-8 and a W-9 if you're going to contract. And of course, your wife could contract and she could have a proper W-8 and W-9 as well. It'll be much easier if you were to do this stuff together. It'll be easier on your relationship and certainly easier to not have to have one in the federal zone while one is not. And so that's a suggestion, but it doesn't mean that you have to. But you definitely would have to navigate and stay out of the federal zone or being connected to each other, at least economically in that capacity. So that's what I would recommend in that idea. Okay, so let me just say luck doesn't enter into anything that we're doing, so don't worry about that. Another thing is you have to remember with respect to a tax liability, you create your own tax liability based upon your own ignorance. And so you have filled out forms improperly. What I'm making up about you is that you may not have been ever a federal citizen and you've been filling out and paying in like a federal citizen. Of course, that's the way you filled things out. So depending on, of course, you've been paying in, whatever that is, you can always stop anytime you like. Okay. For some people, it may be easier to just complete a particular year or whatever that is and do a final filing or something, depending on what time of year it is. If you're you've paid in all year, this is December and all, you might just complete something and start the beginning of the year or whatever the case may be. For corporations and such as that, they sometimes have a particular year in the middle of a year. It's like a calendar year instead of like the annual things like that. But truthfully, you can begin this process at any time. And of course, if you begin a passport process and then she has knowledge of it, the bottom line is once you know the truth, um, you'll be perjuring yourself on some level. So the idea is that you want to be able to do the right thing and do what is legal. I mean, in the sense of like tell the truth. That's the idea. That's what they want you to do. So therefore, those obligations might show up for you. But it is yours to decide, and no one really can decide for you. You got to look at what's in your best interest. And then, maybe later on we can get on the phone and talk about some of those particulars or how you might go along with that kind of process. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Okay. Sure. Yeah, just go to you can go to the contact me on the website and then just include your contact information. Usually I have it if you fill that out correctly, and I'll be glad to give it. And just mention that we talked on the call. Okay. All right. Thank you, and I appreciate you. So there was a question on YouTube. Let me just see if I can catch it here. Um, let's see. Let's see. There you go. Remember to. Okay. Okay. Community standards. That says that on. Okay. Let's see. Someone says, "What are your thoughts on having a Roth IRA, a Rothschild IRA, as a state citizen, since it is not taxable to withdraw once you turn 60?" Okay, all that stuff's in the federal zone. Okay, and so if you want to risk money in being controlled by bankers and or whatever that is, or the stock market or all that stuff, if you want to risk it, then you can see if anything is about that. And again, none of what I'm talking about is about taxes. Okay, we're talking about jurisdiction. Okay, if you filled out forms setting up a Roth IRA, I promise you it's going to be in the federal zone, and you're going to have these tax liabilities. So the idea of pulling it out or not or whatever it is, I would do things in your own personal interests. And listen, money is not safe in the bank at all. The only amount of money you should ever have in the bank is what's coming out of the bank. Okay, so don't save in the bank at all. But save in everything, anything else. Certainly, cash on some levels better than the bank, except for cash is devalued. Every time you go to the grocery store, you see cash more and more devalued because the price of things going up, because the bankers are collapsing the system as we speak, in the way that they can do it so that they don't become liable for the damage that they're causing. They're going to be bailed out the same way the big pharma's bailed out, or any other corporation tied to the District of Columbia is going to get bailed out. Why? Because those people don't represent you. Let me just mute Joe here so that I can. Yeah, let's see. Hold on. Let's see. Yeah, good. Thanks so much. So anyway, so the idea is that, so if depending on how you certainly you've probably set up that as a federal citizen, and with tax ID numbers and all that stuff. That's why you can't take it out till after 60. So, but the bottom line, you might look at whatever the tax damage is, or if you can have it withdrawn, telling the entity that you're going to be paying the tax, so you want them to cut you the entire check, and you'll be liable for the check, whatever that is. We'll help you navigate that. It's best to get as much of that as you can, and then just move on into something else that's a better, secure thing for your assets. Someone said Drake or Kendrick. I don't know what that is. By the way, no response, even just a cop. I'm not sure. I guess there may be some side talking. I'm not sure. Someone says, have you any clients that have successfully submitted your state citizen W-9 forms and not received them? Yeah, like everybody. I mean, generally speaking, maybe there's one or two in which somebody's not liked them or something like that. But no, this is, it doesn't matter if you receive a 1099, that's someone else's testimony. But as long as you give them proper paperwork, we've had this paperwork sent to the IRS will send it to you and say it's not for them, it's for the requester. Okay. And I've been on eBay, made money with eBay. I've never given eBay any social security number. I've got PayPal. I've never given them a social security number or tax ID number. website stuff. You just got to know how to navigate it. We have classes for that. We have our alignment workshop deals with when anyone's asking you for a tax ID number or social and all that. So yeah, we've not had any problem with those forms. Those have been used over the years. Um, so hang on, we'll answer more of those questions. Let me just get over here to Joe's question. Aloha um, from Hawaii. It says, got questions, the passport process, doing it on your own versus services, etc. Can you unmute me for? Oh, yeah, did I mute you? Okay, well, let's make sure you're not muted. Let's see. You're not muted, Joe. Go ahead. Joe's, I can hear you fine. I'll repeat once you ask your question or whatever, I'll repeat it for our friends on YouTube here. So go ahead. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Right. Okay, well, let me get to the first one first, where you're asking about. Let me see if I can remember again. You were just asking about which, the pros and cons of doing it with the workshop or the full passport process. Um, it's a good question, and people try to. You can mute yourself while I'm answering your question because you got a lot of wind in the background there, Joe. Just mute yourself. There you go. And then, so the idea is that it's for different people have a different. Some people are very busy and they'd like someone else to do it, and so that's helpful for them. Some people are don't feel confident to do up their own paperwork, would like someone to do it. Some people like to pay for services, and therefore having us get involved with that. There's a lot of phone time, a lot of getting to know each other. There's a real huge benefit to that, and so we assist them in those processes. We draft up documents and things like that. On the other hand, there are clients who want to know this stuff well, and so they want to do their own paperwork. They want to do these processes, and when they do the workshop for that, they're not on their own because we're always available for them. We will be glad to do any part of the process that they want to add funds for that. We'll help them along the way. At any time they want to reach out or they have a question, we're always available. So nobody's doing it on their own in our community. Nobody has to be by themselves or alone in that. We want people to feel very secure in what they're doing and why they're doing it. So that's it. That's the difference between those things there. As far as the IRS goes, the question was, well, sort of, I mean, question about the IRS doing the $50,000 for federal citizens that they have a lien in place or a levy, and it's greater than $50,000. They do sometimes send some kind of a certification to the Secretary of State to restrict the passport. And if they already have a passport, they can restrict it so that the only travel they can do is back to the states. So we've seen all of that. We've never seen when people do these processes that don't have problems with the IRS, we don't have any clients that are dealing with the IRS that have done our processes. Not one. We have had people that have IRS issues that have come in that we've had to work through and communicate with IRS and try to interrupt some of that has already been on their plate. That is a thing that we have clients dealing with IRS, but generally speaking, we don't. So so if you have more on that question that you had about the $50,000, can you, did I answer your question for you, or is there more to that you want to know? Okay. All right. Sure. No, sure. Well, the thing is that the thing about it is that the most important thing is that we're going to get the explanatory statement in the record. So sometimes people mess up because the State Department will return the explanatory statement. It won't get in the record. They'll do a FOIA request and it's not there because they were told that they have to make sure that that explanatory statement goes back. If they return it with the birth certificate and other supporting documents, that's not good. That's why we have it on the page. The application is not valid without the explanatory statement. So we've had clients send it back to the State Department 2-3 times because the State Department wants to keep returning it. That's a breakdown. So we want to make sure that the clients don't do that. Sometimes clients are, they don't, well, it's a human condition. Sometimes they don't pay attention. Sometimes they don't comprehend. And sometimes they'll do things and they'll go with whatever the acceptance agent or someone says, and they may make a mistake in that way. There's nothing in your life that you can't remedy with more paperwork. So you can always do a process over. You can do it again. You can do something different. You can ultimately contact your congressman to get involved. But like I always believe, we will accomplish what we're after. We don't really know how it's going to go, but we will accomplish it because there's no other option. So that's the way I look at it. So you can't really screw this up. It's just it just may take a little bit long with respect to that. So, but I appreciate that. Okay. Oh yeah, no problem. Looking forward to helping if we can. Yep. Then someone on YouTube asked the question: Do you have to correct your banking info because they ask for a tax ID? Well, listen, you don't have, if you do this process, you're not going to have a tax ID. You may have a social security number. And of course, your bank may have that. Listen, you got to understand that the banks serve the or I'm going to say the IRS serves the Federal Reserve. Okay. They're a collection agency for them. So when people pay income taxes, it goes to transfer payments and interest payments on the debt. Amazingly enough, it doesn't pay the debt, just transfer and interest payments. So that's what you're working for. Okay. So the idea of that is that with respect to the bank, what I've always said is if you have a bank account, just leave it in place. Of course, it has your social security number in it. You can go down to your branch and give them your W-8 and W-9 and let them know, I did some work with the State Department, but I just want you to know that these are my current documents for taxes. Just want you to have them, file them. As long as you give it to them, that's fine. Now, even if you don't and whatever, it still has, the bank account has value. And having your social security number on the bank account doesn't create the tax liability. What does is other forms and other things that you may say or that you may have in writing that has, certainly passport applications, driver's license, other places. And whenever they're asked, are you a U.S. citizen? Unless you clarify that and make it clear, then that's how that's why you'd want to have your W-8, W-9 in there. And you're not looking to have a conversation with them about them. You're just going to say, these are my new paperwork. If you have a corporation or a tax ID number, an EIN or anything like that, an LLC, all that corporate stuff has to be shut down. That's all governmental in nature. It's all in the federal zone. You got to pull out of that. Ultimately, you have to pull out of it. So that'll be up to you to do, and we're glad to assist and help in that way. Then Edward on YouTube asked a question. Can you touch on held stocks in account, TD Ameritrade? Says, are these safe after completing this? Just so you know, nothing in the banks are safe. Okay. End of story, full stop. Whether you do the process or not, nothing in banks is safe right now. Nothing in banks is safe. But the idea is when you do the process, all that stuff's got bad paperwork and you're going to want to correct and update that kind of paperwork. You filled out bad forms, you're going to need to make corrections on that. So that's all. But anyway, so that's, as far as safe, they're in the federal zone. They're looking for tax ID numbers. These IRS could use that kind of information against you by the way you filled forms out, like as if you're in the federal zone. And that's what you would want to correct and make change. So let me see if I can do, make sure that we're getting all these questions. Here's a question on GoToMeeting. It says, if you go from a federal citizen to a state citizen, it eliminates your federal income tax liability. but does that keep you from having to a state tax liability? Uh, that's a good question. If you look up your state statute and codes associated with state income tax, you'll see that it begins with the federal. If you have a federal income tax liability, you're going to have a state income tax liability. If you don't have a federal income tax liability, you won't have a state income tax liability. So it's pretty much like that. It eliminates that as well. Someone says, all same person. Did your state citizen class at the end of it? I think you said the full passport process was. Oh, see, that's yeah. That class. See, now you guys are gonna make me have to do a live class again. I think I'm gonna have to do that. Yeah. So it has. See, that's the problem. If I'm doing a recording, yeah, it was $1,600 at one time, and then what we did. Here's what we changed. Now it's 4,400 for the full passport process, and even the workshop. Here's what we did. What we did was we decided that we weren't going to what we call a la carte the workshops that we have because they're so valuable. What we decided to do was we decided to combine everything into one thing. So when you do the passport workshop, you also get access to all the other workshops that are there. And then if you're doing the full passport process, the same thing. So we'll be doing the full passport process for the driver's license, such same thing with the passport process. So that's all we did was combined everything, and that's what raised the price up accordingly. And so we have other. So what we wanted to do was increase the value of what you're getting, and that's the difference in the price. So that's how that works. Can you make payments? Um, I don't usually do that. No. I mean, I don't like people owing me, and so, but I would be glad to talk about what that looks like to you, and I'd be glad to see what it is that you're talking about. I did have a client who was interested because they're so passionate about the work. They were interested in possibly setting up an arrangement with somebody and setting up some kind of a payment arrangement for that, and then we would do it in pieces and parts and stuff like that, and it would come out the same. So what I would do is you can email me at statecitizen@destinationfreedom.org and just put in the subject line payment arrangement, and then I'll see if that's even available. It isn't available right now, but at least remind me to talk to this particular client, see if they would like to set something up. What will end up probably happening is it'll end up costing you more, for them to facilitate this kind of a process. So, but again, we want to open up possibilities for people. See how that goes. Someone on YouTube says their driver's license says on the front, "This is not a federal ID." Does that mean that I don't have to correct this? All that means that it's not real ID. That's all. It just means that but if you're asked in that application they're asking you for a social security number, and or they may ask, are you a United States citizen? Then it's not that that's federal, but you're making it federal, because if in those answers in that process you're doing it as a federal citizen, then you're the federal part of the ID, not that the state is federal. If the state is implementing the real ID, then the feds are handing the state money and the state's bringing in their control. That's the way it always works. That's how the state doesn't infringe on the state. It invites them into the whoring banking community, and the state is a whore, and so it likes to go after that whoring money. Other than that, I have no opinion on the matter. No, it's just funky. So, my wife's groaning in the background. So, there's a question on the go-to meeting. It says, does that package include the debt discharge program? It does not. Debt discharge class, which I think it's up on the website. I don't think we have anybody taking it right now. We did a live class, so I have to complete that. But that class is the cost of that is $1,776, and so that's a class of its own. So it's not included. Also, we don't include in this full is the setting up trust. Trusts are $3,000. So when we talk about what's included with the passport stuff, are what we call the alignment workshops, which is one workshop which we call alignment, which is driver's license, voter registration, jury duty, that kind of thing. We have a W8, W9 workshop. That's for no one's going to do these processes as an employee. And if you are, you're going to be moving out of that because you have bad paperwork in that. And of course, you're inviting the employer to withhold and you're paying Social Security. All that's in the federal zone. So you're going to end that relationship and contract if the company's good enough for you to contract with. And then and the last one is what we call the IRS 1445. That deals with real estate transactions and things like that. Now, the nice thing about that class is it's very common, not only with real estate, but there's other times when someone wants to give you money for like an insurance claim or some other thing like that, inheritance and all that. That workshop will deal with that kind of um, transactions where they're looking for information, or they may ask you, are you a U.S. citizen? Or they may even ask you, are you a non-resident alien? And most Americans would say, no, they're not. When you really examine the person, like you people would be a non-resident, you're not residing in the District of Columbia, and you're alien. That means you're not a federal citizen, you would be alien. And so a state citizen is alien to the District of Columbia by those terms. So anyway. So that's that, and so that's how that driver's license thing goes, and so that's cool. So, any other questions about our processes and all that? One of the things that people do, especially if they have a house or other types of property, is before they begin these processes, sometimes they'll begin the passport process and they'll go ahead and sign up to put some of their property into trust to protect it from lien or levy. That's a very common thing, and we would recommend that for people who have property that are concerned. It doesn't mean we've never had anybody pursue a client for these things. There's no reaction. Someone had made one mention of IRS and with respect to certain kind of filing. There are people that have done or are thinking that it's doing a revocation election is a good thing. What you risk is it doesn't happen all the time, but what you risk is that the IRS will charge you $5,000 for what they call a frivolous return. So we don't recommend that. A revocation election does not deal with jurisdiction. It's whoever came up with it it's a way of limiting taxes. It doesn't eliminate your tax liability because these are same people that are still paying into Social Security, among other things. So it's a poor remedy. We don't recommend it, but there are people out there promoting it, and some people have begun that. And so that's some of that. Okay, so any other questions on that? I see some familiar names out there. It's good. Glad you're on. One of the things I had said about the office was I did lose some paperwork that was out on my desk and different places. All the paperwork we had in files didn't get water damaged, but quite a bit of paperwork got damaged. I did have a certain type of file holders that were on the wall. I have a client that I was holding their certified documents from the Secretary of State's office. Those records were damaged. It's pretty sad. So, depending on what the client wants, those might have to be resubmitted again, things like that. So, but let's see here if I see if there's another question here. Here you go. How do you operate a business once you correct your passport vendors requiring EIN to resell product? Right? Yeah, all that stuff is part of handling the having a W8 and W9 and alignment workshop. We have to support that. And just like I do, I get paid personally. All your transactions are private, and so if you have a vendor and someone it wouldn't be a vendor. You may be a vendor, is what you're referring to, because your vendors are getting paid by you, and so they're not. You're not going to be doing any IRS paperwork for them. No 1099. But if someone else is asking you for a social or tax ID number, that's why we have a W-8 and W-9 workshop, so you can understand how to do that. And the idea is that that's how your business. If your business has a tax ID number, you got to shut it all down. You're going to be reaching out to your clients and whatever, and say, I'm acquiring my company in my personal capacity, and you'll be eliminating your income tax liability for all that. So, and again, you're not going to be doing employer employee. You're never going to have employees. Everything's going to be contractor like that. Um, Someone says on YouTube says I'm an employee. If I go through the process and my employer still deducts from my paycheck, I'm okay with that as long as I don't have to pay any more to the IRS. Does that work? No, it doesn't work. Mike, you won't be an employee and do this process. That just won't happen, okay? So, because listen, you're not going to be paying in Social Security and paying the IRS and then pretend like you're outside the federal zone. That's not your. They're doing that because of your W-4 form. You're saying you have a tax liability. So we deal with this jurisdiction. It's not about money. Money is a byproduct of pulling out of that jurisdiction. So if the company is important enough for them to for you to work for them, then contract with them as a vendor, if you will. Um, but if you don't know your value and what you bring to the table, then you might not be able to negotiate that with the company. Okay, but you gotta um, um, yeah, of course, that's a vendor. You're going to be contracting. So all you'll do is submit an invoice at the end of the week or whatever it is for your, however you're doing it. You might come up with a productivity type of relationship where you accomplish this, you're doing this or that. But you can be a consultant or whatever it is. But the beauty of it is that you get to pick your hours and your time. There, you're not an employee, so you're not going to be punching a time clock. Okay. Um, the idea is that they're going to manage your time if you're an employee. If you're a contractor, you're going to produce a certain result. That's all they care about. And that's going to bring them value. So you have to understand the economics of it so that you know how to communicate to the company that you're going to be an asset to them. Because the truth of the matter is, if you're not making them money, then you're a charity case. And I don't believe that's the case. So the idea is that you're going to be responsible for your own taxes, and so you would be giving them your W-8 and W-9 and be changing that. So you might have a conversation with human resources or the manager or the owner of the company and say, I did this process with the State Department and I eliminated my income tax liability, so I cannot be an employee anymore. I have to contract. And so I'd like to set up that contract and define it accordingly, and then I will get the same work done, get it done, and I'll do this. Now, if they want to try it out and have you do 10 hours a week, that's awesome. Then you get another company that does the same kind of thing. You work for 3, 4, 5 different companies doing the same thing, and you're just a contractor, and that shows that as well. If you only have one customer, then and that's okay. You can have one exclusive customer. Then you can write in your contract that they have uh, an exclusive relationship, and then you can charge them more for the exclusivity. Any All kinds of uh, professionals do that. Otherwise, you'll cut their hours and you'll go and work for other customers and such like that, because what they're afraid of is what they call misclassification, and it has federal impact as well as state impact. So the corporations are leery of this kind of thing unless you're able to communicate it to them in a way that they feel good. And of course, they want tax documents, so your W-8 and your W-9 would be those tax documents. We're glad to help you with that. Um, I was going to do a class. There's one class that I have coming up. We're going to have a day in the day in the life with IRS. Is everything we have on IRS from soup to nuts. That's going to be online coming. And then another class I want to do that I'm looking to do, and I've done this on a number of calls, but take people from being an employee all the way to doing their own business and all the details associated with that, so they can just take these class and it'll be able to watch it again and again and help them deal with all that. So that's coming up. So yeah, contracting is how you do that. I got another question on here. Let's see here. After 25 years of doing this and really no issues. Okay. That's not a question, but thanks, Tim. Um, does this method work for people who became U.S. citizen via naturalization? It's all the same. If you do the passport process, you're going to be letting the State Department know that you had errors with respect to your naturalization process. And of course, if you look on your naturalization certificate, it does have that first state, your first state citizenship is in that naturalization document because it does have your state in there. Of course, all the supporting paperwork that you did with respect to immigration and naturalization is in the federal zone. So in that naturalization process, you went from being a resident alien to being a federal citizen. And of course, it's not that that you did that naturalization process, but that's how they enticed you to get a social security number and all that. So you'll be correcting that with your passport process. That at no time have you ever been a federal citizen. That's just what you practice. Um, Question is, someone asks, is capital gains tax on crypto something state citizens are not required to pay? Um, yeah, if you don't have an income tax liability, you have no income tax liability that on whatever source at all. It doesn't matter. If you're a federal citizen, that's when capital gains tax on crypto is valid. Okay, and they will come after that. So, um, and then listen. Not only will they come after it with respect to they'll do the IRS process, but if they see that you moved into crypto and you're paying income over here or something, and over here you're hiding or sneaking as a federal citizen, then just like Ian Freeman in New Hampshire and others, is you'll be charged with money laundering. You don't want that. So you want to come out of those jurisdictions so that you can keep all of your assets. So that's just the way it goes. So, and listen, there's plenty of people, Americans in the crypto space because they don't want, they want to move assets into crypto so that the government can't get it. That's noble. But if you're a federal citizen, you have cryptocurrency, you owe income tax. Now you just move from doing something that you have your privacy over here, but you've now moved into a thing that's illegal. These are legal processes we're doing. We're not talking about tax rebellion, none of that stuff. If, like I've said this hundreds of times, it's more important for you to understand who has an income tax liability than that you think you don't. Okay? If you think income tax is unconstitutional, you do not understand federal jurisdiction. If you think that that the federal gun laws or other things the federal government does, if you think that it's unconstitutional, you don't understand the Constitution and the power that the federal government has in their jurisdiction. And so that's what you need to understand. That's what our classes are for. And so that's part of that. So, that's cool. Do you have anything with your birth certificates? I have nothing with my. When you get a birth certificate, the state has a record of your birth. That has power because there's power to that because you can get welfare, you can get dollars, you can get all kinds of benefits by proving that you have citizenship in one of the states. In America, citizenship is a birthright based in geographical location. So if you come here, no matter who you are, what it is, and you're born here, then you have citizenship. That's how it works. Some places it's blood, some places it's geographical, what they call the land. But the idea is, do I believe in straw man, capitalized letters on names? And I don't believe in any of that crap. All that stuff is a distraction. All that stuff is baseless. No facts or evidence to support the claim. Now, when I say it has no facts and evidence to support the claim, what people who are in those faith-based belief systems, what they hear in their head is, he doesn't understand it. I got all the books in my office on. I've read up all that. We used to do all that stuff. I understand the supposition, but when you read that stuff, once you come out of it, you realize all of the presumptions that are in there, massive presumptions based on zero evidence. And let me just say one simple sentence that handles it all, and that's like this. No one is obligated to fulfill any contract or agreement that's without their knowledge or against their will. Let me repeat that. No one is obligated to fulfill any contract or agreement that's without their knowledge or against their will. Period. End of story. Full stop. So, and that's not where these straw man, and every one of these straw man things end in the Pope and the Queen as if they're somebody important. Nah, just more nonsense. It's just more ridiculousness. That being said, I'm not saying that states aren't corrupt or that governments don't monetize everything that moves or that they don't have relationships with bankers and all that shit's playing out. But it has nothing to do with you. So that's just part of that. So another question comes up, says, is the passport process important because passport applications are what's used as evidence in court that you do actually believe that you're a U.S. citizen and basically to prove perjury? That's a fact. The reason we do that is I have seen the IRS use passport applications against people in court at the Browns trial in New Hampshire. I was there. I watched them use that as evidence. And so I knew I hadn't done my passport the way they did it. I had an explanatory statement. I was a state citizen in my passport back in January of 2001. And so that, you know, that's, and so when I saw that, I was like, oh, wow, I'm glad I did my passport the way I did. So when I talked to the defendant, Elaine, and the people that are around the table that were supporting her, she didn't know that there was another way to fill out a passport. And so that's when we began helping other people. And that's when we began getting certified copies of the passport file from signed by the Secretary of the United States. So you can have evidence that will support your claim that you're not a federal citizen. If you read IRS court cases and IRS publications on state citizen and all that, they will tell you in there that it's frivolous. But let me tell you, if you read what they say and you understand what they're writing, they first address it and say, a taxpayer's doing this, a taxpayer's doing that. They are correct. If a taxpayer is claiming to be a federal citizen, then that will be frivolous. And they will persecute and prosecute you because a taxpayer has an income tax liability. So you'd have to understand who is a taxpayer. And of course, the tax code specifically deals with a taxpayer is an individual or a corporation or whatever, number of different things. An individual is a federal citizen or a resident alien. Federal citizens, that's a 14th Amendment citizen and a resident alien, have an income tax liability. So it's true what they're saying. So if a guy's in there and he's got bad paperwork, he's claiming to be that he has a tax liability on his passport, his driver's license, all kinds of other places. And then he's saying I'm a state citizen when he has bad paperwork. That's frivolous. We eliminate that by doing massive amounts of paperwork. That's why everything we do is for the record. We're always building a record so that we have facts and evidence to support the claim. And in my life that I've been doing this, I've never seen, certainly none of our clients have been in IRS court. I did have a friend and client was dealing with the IRS years ago. And we started off that whole thing that he was not in that jurisdiction, not being a federal citizen or resident alien and all that. And they had unsigned court documents. We got the sheriff's department involved. And so the sheriff's department was interrupting the marshal's office, giving bad paperwork and stuff like that. And so we had the sheriff there. I don't know if I talk about this in my class, but this was a constitutional sheriff in New Hampshire. It was in Carroll County. And so the marshal wasn't even aware that he was submitting subpoenas without signatures on them. He was astonished. Matter of fact, after this ordeal, he resigned because he realized he had been doing illegal activity in the state. And so the sheriff was going to enforce and not allow paperwork that was unsigned being submitted as if it was a proper subpoena. Eventually, my friend went to court because they were compelling him. They were subpoenaing him to show up. And so he presented the documents that he wasn't a federal citizen, among other things. And the IRS was there and said, we can't overcome this first point. And they're asking the judge what he recommended. He said, you don't want me to rule on this. I recommend you withdraw and we'll seal it. And that's exactly what they did. That's the only IRS thing that we've had with respect to a client. And this was back in, the mid 2000s or something, a number of years ago. We've had no clients since deal with anything like that. But we're glad that we had that proper paperwork for him. He had done the passport process. He's one of my friends from years ago, been involved, uh, back when we were promoting America for Freedom and Fascism. So that's part of that. And so we're glad to have that experience, and it's good. The only other time I dealt with the IRS since my own stuff was I did serve papers on an IRS agent. Actually, it was in that same case, and I went down to the IRS building. I went in and served that particular IRS agent with paperwork, litigation paperwork, and so he was kind of surprised. The look on his face was, listen, you know, there's a certain amount of joy in your life that you can have for doing some of this stuff, but there's a special kind of joy when you're serving papers on IRS people. If you've never had that joy and thrill to see the twinkle in their eyes of like a deer in the headlights, it's kind of fun. Then what was amazing and miraculous about that situation was later that week it was Independence Day in my town, and so that was in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and my town's Wolfboro, so it's about 30 miles or more away, maybe it's more, from the seacoast. And so on Independence Day, like I'm wont to do, I usually will be handing out constitutions and Declaration of Independence and things like that on my street, so we would do that. And I was actually in front of my house and I handed this guy and his wife a constitution. And he says to me, he says, well, this is the second time you're handing me some paperwork this week. And I'm like, when he said that, I knew he was talking about himself. I'm like, well, you might want to read this book. But that was really wild that I actually would see him again and hand him some paperwork because he remembered that. And I think at some point he resigned. Of course, we've been in this a long time. A lot of people in government resign. That's a common thing. But anyway, that's a IRS story. That's the only IRS stories I have with that. Anyway, we've had IRS, our W8 and W9 has been sent to IRS, and they'll send it back to you and say this is for the requester. IRS doesn't have any problem with any of our paperwork at all. Question says, is it that they have a pattern of prosecution that's being broken? I guess if enough people fix their citizenship, they might use other evidence of some kind that we haven't seen yet in courts. Well, I just hear this, oh, they're just going to do some other way to work it out here. No, listen, this is all congruent with the tax code, so they don't have to do another way. And listen, we're not low-hanging fruit, okay? These are processes that we're glad to bring this stuff into the light. And it's not anything in their best interests to bring light, but most of the stuff with the IRS is automated, and not until you're moving actually into court somehow, or even that they're actually going to take money from you from the bank or an employer and those kind of things, do you actually get wedding signatures on any of your paperwork. So, and many times even then you don't get a wedding signature because you're probably not dealing with anyone. It's all computer generated. So so it's not likely that you're going to have trouble with the IRS, and so I don't see them fixing anything because then you're all the power that they have comes from you. When you begin to wield the power that you have and you do the right paperwork, not going to have problems with the IRS. It's going to be, as my wife says, a non-event. So it'll be easy for that. Okay, any other questions? I think we're coming to we've moved into our second hour. What else did I have in there? Yeah, I already talked about what some of the stuff that's coming up are on our table there. Does anybody else have any questions, any slide comments? I should do some, do we send the IRS letter? Do we send the IRS a letter every year? No. Only you never lead with IRS. You always respond to them. You don't have to do anything. But if you have no tax liability, you don't need to write to them. If they're looking for something, they'll ask you, they'll write, and then you can give them a proper response. And you never ignore the IRS. You always respond. There's another thing about acquiescence. A lot of people don't understand the concept of acquiescence. You can look it up. Governments and corporations have no liability of silence by agreement by silence or acquiescence. That doesn't work for them. Okay. Only when a corporation or a government will address something does it get animated and become liable for them. Now, people, on the other hand, can't use a defense of silent. If they're silent, then they would acquiesce. Okay, so people have those responsibilities. Governments and corporations don't. So, so if IRS writes to you, you need to respond. Okay, you can't ignore them; they won't go away, and that's not the best way to handle it. So, that's an important thing to keep in mind. Anything else? I can't. Anything else? So yeah, you don't have to send them a letter every year. Uh, if they need something from you, they'll reach out and ask, and then you can elegantly respond to them. That's the funny thing is when I was years ago when I was making the decision whether I was going to, collect receipts or write letters, and so I was prepared to write letters for the rest of my life. That would have been better than collecting receipts and then disclosing and filling out forms. So, but it only takes, it's about if you're engaging with them or whatever, it could be, within that year, you kind of get to wrap everything up and do whatever it is. After a while, it just dissipates, or they may find some place to lean on. And it doesn't mean they'll do a lien without it even being leaning on property. Maybe just leaning in general in the county or whatever it is. But that ends up, the good thing about that, it ends up completing that process. And so they've got the lien, it is what it says, and that just sits there or not. Okay. And so, but the idea is it's not going to be a lifelong, relationship with IRS of writing them letters. And so I thought I was really good. And now I get more IRS letters than I ever have. because all the clients that I do work with IRS, they send me their letters so that I can write them and address them. And of course, we have those remedies and those writings, so it's nothing that we have to work really hard at. Right now, we're dealing with that $50,000 alleged certification with IRS. We're doing a couple FOIA requests for some clients so that we can get clear about what it is that they're certifying. And then we're going to do some court action in order to overturn that that hold on their passport. And I think if there are remedies in the tax code for dealing with that, and if we're not going to prevail there, which I think we will, but if we don't, then we'll sue the federal government for detaining on some level and keeping a person from traveling. So there'll be actual damages that we can assert if they don't want to release and allow them to travel. And it's really kind of weird because you see, it's not even the federal government is harming you. You see what ends up being is, although not being able to get on an aircraft ends up being that the corporation is the one that's harming you. And that's the way fascism works, is the federal government or the government gets the corporations or the businesses to be the enforcer of their whatever it is they're doing. So we're going to go down that path ultimately, and we'll resolve that. We will resolve it. I don't know how it'll work out, but I do know that we will work it out and it'll get done. So we got, just a couple clients with that. Someone asked a question: can state citizens use tools like Coinbase, etc., to get fiat, or are we limited to peer-to-peer tools? Another good question. One of the reasons I don't like to deal with Coinbase, which is a crypto exchange for anybody who doesn't understand what that is because at the very beginning, they decided that they were going to disclose to IRS for all of their clients that are over $40,000, I think, or something like that. And so we knew already that in the crypto space, they're going to rat people out. So that's because Coinbase probably is a corporation and all that. So again, corporations believe that they're in the federal zone. They don't understand it. And being in the crypto space, there is a willful ignorance, and we're glad to help it out with that. But your issue with respect, there's two issues with respect to dealing with Coinbase. One, just the fact that that exchange will have your banking information. So there's no privacy in that, with just the fact that they know and have that information. But the biggest deal is the KYC, or the know your customer. Like a bank, they want data on you because they're going to report. So if you're going to deal with Coinbase, you're going to have to deal with it like we have with our alignment class. They're going to ask certain questions. Are you a U.S. citizen? What's your tax ID number? Those things. You have to have explanatory statements, or you're going to have to make sure that you stay out of the federal zone if you're in and using that exchange. And of course, just I can't always say that just because they're attached to your bank that doesn't create a tax liability. Because listen, I have never given PayPal uh, a social or a tax ID number. 3 different times they've asked me over the years for that data, and I've always given them my W-9, and we're still doing just fine. So it's not so much that Coinbase, see, they're going to report, but they're going to learn or find out that they don't have to report your activity because you're going to be exempt. And that's because you're going to give them your W-8 and W-9. And it's going to show that you have no tax liability, so they don't have to report. So it'd be like Coinbase dealing with clients in another part of the world. They're not doing that. But Coinbase, as an international company, they're dealing with federal citizens worldwide. That's why they ask that citizenship question. But I do recommend peer-to-peer for that. And I'm not sure what BISQ is, but yeah, I always recommend peer-to-peer transactions, as many as you can. So, can your company help with the explanatory statement for Coinbase? Well, if you'd have to become a client, of course, and then you can do the workshop, and then you'll have access to the alignment workshop. If you want to do the full passport process, that's one thing. Or if you do the passport workshop and you want to add us to help you with that particular thing, then then there's fees for that. We certainly can. We have already written stuff like that and know how to deal with it. We'd be glad to help you with that. You're definitely going to need to take the W8, W9 class because we have that. If you want us to do all that stuff, then there's the full passport process. So either way, but yeah, we certainly can help, and we have helped people in that. Whatever we can do for you, glad to help out. Let's see here. If are no longer a federal citizen, who cares about what companies do with your info? Well, the idea is listen, third parties do disclose to IRS. So IRS, in many situations, the only evidence that they have that you've made a certain amount of money is what's being disclosed to them, a third-hand information. So that's there. That doesn't mean that creates a tax liability, but that gives the IRS some data. It's better that if you're going to deal with these companies, that you give them proper paperwork so that what they have is valid for you and that you don't have an income tax liability. So it doesn't, again, the 1099 or other information doesn't create your tax liability. Your bad information does. And if the company has if your company has your social security number because they asked you for it in some capacity, that's a W-9. And if you signed off on that, you're saying you have a tax liability. That's the breakdown. So I'm making up about you, Jed, is that you've never been a federal citizen, but you have filled out bad paperwork, and that's what you need to correct. That it's you that's empowering the IRS, not the other companies or whatever it is. So you want to make sure that changes. Okay. All righty. Well, thank you all for your patience and for your kindness today. Thanks for your great questions. I'm glad to be a part of your life. And if there's anything we can do for you, just reach out. You can always reach out. I can't always promise that we'll get back on the phone with you because there's only so many hours in the day. But we do try to get you onto these calls. If you need me to connect with you, I'll be glad to. And of course, if you want me to deal with your particular situation, you can buy an hour time, and I'll be glad to give myself wholly to that. All right. So thank you so much for your kindness. I covet your prayers. I appreciate you praying for me personally and my wife and I and my family, and for the things that we're after and wanting to have happen. We definitely want to get as many people outside the federal zone as we can, and we're glad to help and to do that. Okay, take care. Love you. Like and subscribe if that's something that you do on YouTube. We appreciate that. That helps us in some ways. I don't know why, but try that. Okay, and we'll talk to you soon. Let me see. Let me let these guys go on. Let me see if I can. Oh, here we go. We'll see if we can let them go on YouTube. All right. You guys are the best. We'll talk to you soon.